Welcome, everybody. Joe Tarnowski with ECRM here, and I have back with me Art Sutley and Ashley Bray from Bar Business Magazine. Guys, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Last time we spoke, we were kind of just in the beginning of this whole lockdown, and so we talked about what was happening in bars and restaurants because of that, and kind of started looking to when they started opening up. So we're here today now because they are in the process of opening up. So we're going to have a little discussion about how they are opening up, what are they doing, what steps are they taking, as well as a little bit about how they're making their customers feel comfortable. So, Art, you want to give a little recap of what's happened since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, I mean, listen, a lot. I mean, when we were speaking the last time, it was such an unknown and people were pivoting so quickly. I mean, it was like closure. What do? We don't have delivery. We have to get a delivery program, set into play. Or, changing the way people perceive your on-premise location. Some places were calling themselves a liquor store and supermarket and just functioning totally differently. Mm-hmm. So, I think we've come a long way, and, a lot of places were, scrambling to make it to this point, right? We're at the point where we're being told you can open in a different fashion, but they made it through like the darkest day, I call it, which was delivery only. So, now we come to those next step problems, which is how do I run my business today, which was different than yesterday, the day before that, and the way that I've always known running my business. So, it's an interesting time, but the individuals who hustled, who changed, who, had to make some really, really tough decisions, made it to this point. And, I would love to say it's going to be super easy to move forward from here. Now we're just in a different type of a difficult situation. But, light at the end of the tunnel, brighter skies, is that we can open in some capacity.
And you know what? It's a mixed bag across the country because, like New York, we just started opening for outdoor seating on Monday. You guys in Jersey have opened. However, other areas of the country that opened earlier are now getting hit again with spiking cases. Yesterday we had the record high in number of new cases, and that's starting to put a halt on some of the openings that are going on, or maybe they're going backwards. So it's kind of a weird situation now, right?
Yeah, it's confusing to begin with overall, right? Like nothing's uniformed. Every state is starting out differently. Like you had some states that came right out of the gate that said outdoor, 50% indoor. You had other states that said, outdoor, 25% indoor customers. And then you had some that said only outdoor. There hasn't really been a true uniformed way because every state has been hit a little bit differently. Obviously, we knew we were going to be the latest and the last to do everything where we were because we were the first and hardest hit. But yeah, it is a scary time. We do see some news that, things are spiking, which I think we all in our minds knew would happen in some capacity. We went from a huge halt and stay indoors to we're going to start letting people out now and wanting people to kind of move about the United States. So we are going to see that, but Ashley and I can tell you the number one thing is as a business owner, you have to follow these rules. You have to protect your customers, but you also have to protect your staff. And we can't be excited to say, oh my God, we took huge losses, excited that we can open now. We have to make up for those losses over the last 3 months. We still have to, draw that line in the sand and say, hey, we're able to move forward, but we just can't run before we walk. Mm-hmm. And we need to protect the people around us, including our core staff.
So, Ashley, you did some research and on customer perceptions. And can you talk a little bit about what you found from that?
Definitely. So I've had a lot of numbers and studies and research surveys come across my desk in the last few weeks, and it's interesting that Art brought up the importance of keeping your employees safe, because that's one of the things that consumers are actually interested in that maybe a bar or restaurant wouldn't necessarily think of. A survey came out that said 89% of people want to know what you're doing to protect your employees, and then one point above that, 90% want to know what your business is doing to protect them. So this is definitely something that's a concern amongst people, because customer perception right now is hesitant. They believe that bars and restaurants are okay to dine in, but there's still a lot of people who just think that there might be an issue there. It might not be totally safe. So you have to keep that in mind when you're opening. And a big part of making people feel safer is through communication. Your social channels are huge right now. You need to be putting out messaging surrounding cleaning protocols, social distancing measures. Has your menu changed? If it's a virtual menu, how can your customers access it when they get there? Do you have a virtual, reservation or waitlist system? These are all things that your customers are going to be looking for, and so you want to put that out through social media, on your website, in any way you possibly can. But there's just a lot of people out there who aren't ready to come out yet. So if you are able to make them feel safe, you have a better chance of getting them through your doors, whether it's for outdoor or indoor seating.
Well, you mentioned, and I think you had a column or something from John Taffer where there was like 3 groups of people.
Yes.
And could you talk a little bit about that? I know I fall in that second group, but
I am too. So John came out and said that there's 3 waves really of customers that are going to come back to your bar. And the first group are young, kind of fearless people. They don't have pre-existing conditions. This is not a big deal to them. So they're going to be the first ones in your bars and restaurants. The second is he views it as thirds. So the first is, okay, this young third. And then the second is the reserve third. And those are people who are going to wait to see what happens with the first group. So a lot of these big cities are having, outbreaks. That reserve third is probably not going to come out just yet. And then the last one he dubs the certain third, which means that these people need to be certain that they are safe. They're going to be the last customers that come to your bars and restaurants. They're going to wait till the very last, minute. And they're the ones with the money, because they're typically an older population. They may have pre-existing conditions, which leads them to be a little bit more, cautious. So it's interesting to see if this pans out and we do have like these waves of customers that end up returning.
So I would guess the messaging that you were talking about that's so important to get out really needs to be aimed at those 3 different waves, to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's really wave 2 and 3, right? One's coming out regardless.
No matter what.
No matter what. They're coming out because they've determined early on that they feel they're not susceptible to this, or nor do they feel that it's a problem for them. So that group is really thinking about themselves and saying, hey, I'm in an age demographic that maybe won't get hit as hard as the other. All age demographics will get hit by this thing. It's just they feel that theirs won't. It's that second and third group that you can figure out. Now, the third group, that third group's not coming out until there's a cure, until there is a medical toolbox for this. But the one thing that you can do with that group is to show them that you've made the right moves, because that might impact some of their decisions in the future. So it's really that second group you want to say, hey, come out to my establishment, come back to us. We're doing everything correctly.
Well, and then there's always the to-go cocktails, which is now extended, right?
Correct, which I think we spoke about. And I told you I was fighting for a lot of states, and so was Ashley, for governments to keep that going after this. And listen, I think our world was going that way because I was in a lot of seminars talking about, next year and the year after that, when that was going to come out. But if you're going to put restrictions, and especially now that we're seeing they might be halted or fluctuated back, it's going to be necessary. The revenue you can make off of food is good, but it's nowhere near what you can make off of alcohol. If you're going to stop the bar of a restaurant, meaning people can't go in and sit at the bar or dine in and drink, and you're going to have limited capacity, they're going to need to make that number up somehow. And adding alcohol to orders going out for delivery or to go is the only way for them to make up that difference. Because now you're adding $15, $20, $25, $30 onto a delivery order because they're adding cocktails.
I agree with Art. A lot of states have come out and given the green light to these to-go cocktails, not just you know, in that current moment when we were all kind of in stay-at-home orders and quarantine orders, it's definitely going to be for the coming months. So it'll be interesting to see if that's something that gets added to the books permanently. What I wanted to say earlier, though, about customer perception is it is more important than ever now to not only follow the guidelines and the rules of your particular state, but also to know your customer better than you have ever known them before, because this is a very polarizing issue. Some people view it as an overblown distraction, and then there's others who view it as a really risky, you know, health threat to our communities. So you need to know which camp your customers fall into, and that trickles down to protocols you're going to put in place. Are you going to require masks or no mask? Or, you know, what kind of messaging are you going to put out for these people? So it's important to know your customer right now.
And I think that having those protocols will actually prevent a lot of arguments that are going on, and the shaming that you mentioned.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of mask shaming going on right now on both sides for wearing and for not wearing. So if it's not something that's mandated in your state, then it's a conversation you need to have with your staff and you know, as an owner, and kind of decide what you're going to do about it. So.
Yeah, and I was just out to dinner 2 nights ago. Joe, we were talking about it a little bit earlier. So went out with the same group of people that the night that everything shut down in our area, which was very early on, we went back out after 3 months. Same group to the same restaurants. But what was interesting to see is that when, as a group of 8, you know, because that's the max you can dine out at, we approached the hostess to talk about our reservation, and we all had masks on because we hadn't been seated yet. We hadn't been put into our location, which we almost function as like our little quarantine location, right? Like we're going to sit, we're going to take our mask down, but we're not moving around. And if we had to get up to go to the bathroom inside, masks go back on. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting to see that it was almost 50% no mask to mask when people approached the hostess. So they were moving around in an area with no mask on. And I know what the governments are trying to do. They're basically trying to say, utilize those tables as your home base, right? Mm-hmm. So now the people aren't moving around with no masks on. We know one of the things that we just had in New Jersey was a establishment who was a beer garden not do that, right? So pictures came out after only being open 4 days, and people were walking around standing and drinking. They weren't anchored to a table, and a lot of them didn't have masks on in clusters of people, and they got their outdoor license revoked. And it happened within 24 hours of the pictures going out. So I think all restaurant owners, managers, staff, anyone has to be on the lookout for that, because let me tell you something, they're not messing around. The ABC is going to start pulling liquor licenses that they feel are not following their guidelines. So this is not something to mess around with as a business owner.
And people are so quick to take pictures and videos. And I was reading about my neighborhood in the news, and it was an article that had video snippets and pictures of all the local bars and the crowds in front of them. And there were calls to 311. And so I agree. I mean, they really need to stay on top of it, because the consumers are not going to let them get away with it.
No, and what happened, and this goes back to what Ashley said about the different groups, right? If you looked at the groups with no masks on, standing, drinking, partying, they were part of group 1, right? They were like, I don't care, I'm not putting my mask on, I'm the first one out. But the complaint that was put in the picture was put in by a person who was part of that second wave that maybe came out a little too early, but they didn't make them feel comfortable. And I'm telling you right now, that customer said in that complaint that she will not go back to that establishment, and she's not going to be able to now for outdoor because it's been pulled. So, you know, business owners, you can't mess around with that because they're not giving these back. Once they take them, you're done.
Yeah. I've seen a friend of mine has a mask with a hole in it for a straw, and the mask comes with a straw. It comes with a metal straw with a colored band, and it's got a plug. So when you're not drinking, you put the plug in there, and when you're drinking, it just it was pretty smart. It was pretty cool idea for at least when they were standing outside in the front.
There's been a lot of innovations. I mean, in a lot of industries, but in the bar industry especially, it's a very creative group, you know. So I think they've come up with some unique ways to deal with these restrictions.
Well, I think we're a lighter group, right? It can be fun. Like we can take the mask thing, and I think our sector of the industries can poke a little fun at it and do something, kitschy, and I think that helps the movement, right? I think it kind of just says, hey, it's, you can still drink with a mask on, and, we can poke fun at it. I'm sure a year ago, we never thought we would be walking around in masks like we've seen other countries doing. So,
and it's such a branding opportunity too. You got all, instead of the beer taps with the logos, just, okay, you got to go to the restroom. Here, take this, branded mask with you, So it's it opens up opportunities like that.
Don't worry, I've already been approached by some liquor brands to find out when I'm going out, if I would wear their brand on my mask.
There you go.
There's some entrepreneurs out there thinking about it.
Well, speaking of innovation, Ashley, you mentioned the interior and exterior of the bars and restaurants. This is having an impact on it. What are you seeing? What are they doing?
There's a lot of different things going on. Barriers are huge right now, whether it be plexiglass or another plastic material to kind of block off eating areas. I would say no matter what a bar chooses to do that, it should be flexible, because the only thing that's certain about the current situation we're in is that it's uncertain. And so things could change. I mean, masks weren't recommended at the start, and now, a few weeks into it, they said, oh no, cloth masks should be worn. So I think if you're going to use barriers, I wouldn't spend a ton of money on it, and I would make it so that it's easy to take down and move around in case things change. We're also seeing a lot more in terms of outdoor seating. So bars who maybe didn't have an outdoor patio are now expanding into parking lots. A lot of cities and towns are shutting down streets and allowing bars to put tables and seating out there on the street to kind of make it kind of an al fresco little area to dine. On the interior, touchless is the name of the game. It is the fewer contact points that you can make during a customer's journey through your restaurant, the better. So you're not going to see physical menus. They're going to be triggered via QR codes or another virtual way. You can go online to the restaurant's website and get the menu. You're also not going to see a lot of shared condiments. Single-use condiments are going to be used. A lot of disposable cups, things like wrapped straws. So just ways to kind of cut down on the amount of touching and the chances for exposure that people will, encounter in bars and restaurants.
And then the bars and restaurants that are opening for inside, limited capacity, but I'm guessing, the limited capacity is going to, enable them to, I guess, earmark certain seating or table areas.
Yeah, a lot of people have had to start out at 50%, like Art said earlier. That seems to kind of have been the benchmark across states, is once you're allowed for indoor dining, it's 50%, and then it'll go up from there. So spacing of tables. I mean, right off the bat, a lot of people have had to take tables out just to make it so that they can space these, tables 6 feet apart. And I think that's why it's good that you have outdoor as an option. And I think bars should look for ways to maybe take the seats that they had to eliminate inside and put them outside, so that you're still dealing with, the same kind of capacity but split across 2 areas. But it's tough, because a lot of these guys, it's the amount of tables you can turn in a night that determines your margin. And now when you have 50% less tables, it's that much harder.
I think it hits the city bars in a different way, right? Like you go to somewhere that's not in urban or New York City or, a Chicago and things like that. A lot of the space, especially in New York, we have are long and narrow. Mm-hmm. And primarily when you built these establishments out, it was all bar. You have those super long bars. Well, bars are off limits now. Mm-hmm. So you have 7 tables in the back, no outdoor space. You're not allowed to use your bar. How do it doesn't make sense for you to open, because you can open at 50% capacity, but 70% of your overhead comes back. It just doesn't make sense when you don't have that type of space. So I think, what Ashley's talking about is important. And I think the guys who can win on this are the guys with the very open space that can actually spread tables out or separate them with some barriers, flexible barriers. And a reason that I think that, Ashley, it's so important that she talks about, don't go too crazy and start anchoring these things down, because this thing is ever changing. Capacities are changing. Things can go backwards as fast as they can go forwards. You don't want to anchor anything down, because you might have to change your configuration so many times through this. So you want to be able to move these barriers and have the option to customize them as more certainty comes out in the future about, what these guidelines are.
And you're right. I've seen in my neighborhood. I'm gonna share one picture with you guys. This is right across the street from me. It's an Italian restaurant, and this is in the street. That where that green artificial grass is the parking spaces right outside. Now, this restaurant has the good fortune of being on a corner, so they have that side, you know. But not all, you know. You have other places where they're in the middle of the block, so maybe they have two parking spots worth in the front, and they have to be a little more creative.
Yeah. I mean, I think when Ashley, you know, we always talk about table turns and the importance. This is something that an owner really needs to calculate. I mean, we were a group of 8, and we were very upfront with our server. We're like, listen, we're here to enjoy, but we're not here to take up 8 seats. So keep stuff coming as quickly as possible. We'll enjoy it, and then we'll move on, because I understand, like, you don't want to sit there and take 2.5 hours because they have limited space, and now you're slowing down. You've already eaten your meal.
Yeah.
And as you actually go deeper into your you know, sitting with your friends, you're drinking a little bit slower. So you are taking these quick table turns away from them. So I think owner operators really have to not be afraid to talk to their customers and put a limit on the tables. Not always feasible, depending on how orders are going into the kitchen and to your bartenders, but having something in place is important to keep those table turns going, because that's where they're going to maximize the revenue off of that particular table.
Maybe a reserving, put kind of like saying, okay, you have this until this time,
Correct.
then the next one, or just something to manage their expectations.
100%.
And I think that's where to-go and delivery remains important. Bar may not be surviving alone on it, but I think it's still a huge part of their profit share. So if they can only sit, you know, 10 tables, whereas before they could sit 20, those to-go cocktails are going to be, you know, a big thing in their bottom line. So,
well, and you mentioned communicating with customers earlier. Well, you talked a little bit about it, but I also think, you know, and you mentioned, you know, about safety protocols and changes and things. Do you think it would be helpful for them to also maybe put something out there about consumer etiquette in this new scenario, like to address? I've seen some of the local restaurants put some stuff out saying, you know, your servers are working hard, they're doing more work than the other. You know, be sure to keep that in mind. Don't hog the tables, you know, and just like some simple etiquette, addressing some of those things that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're a customer and you're hard on a server right now, you are a cold person. Yeah. I honestly, like, if after all we've been through as a community and humanity, and with everything going on, you need to understand now they're coming out, right? They might be as nervous as some of the other people. Maybe they're a number 2, but they're coming out early because they have to work. So we need to understand, like, they're working as hard as they can. An owner is no way ready for this system. Everybody's doing a new system. So we have to understand that this is pretty much like a soft opening for a new restaurant to work the kinks out for the next couple of weeks. And, you know, we got to support that in every way we can. I mean, you know, everybody's trying as hard as they can, and so are the staff. And listen, they're positive, so let's keep them positive as well.
And I think it's a sad reality that there are those people out there who have mistreated staff members or have short tempers, and, you know, get into it with certain staff if things don't go exactly as they want, or they don't go in the way that they did before the pandemic. So I don't think it would be bad to necessarily put messaging out there reminding your customers that, you know, patience, pack your patience along with your mask. Strike the right tone. Don't come across as scolding or condescending, but I don't think it could hurt to put that in your social media messaging.
Gotcha. And maybe just also some, you know, guidelines for navigating the space and dealing with other people. I mean, because as much, you know, as like what I'm seeing over here, sure, there is a lot more space outside, but they're still kind of close together. The image that I showed you, they put trees in between each table. So they're kind of really forcing it, but they have the space. Others, where they don't have as much space, there's still that, you know, proximity issue.
One thing that with the servers, I want to go back to. I just remembered there's a restaurant bar that is doing a great job, and there's a few of them doing it where they're showing their servers on their social media and making sure that you have that human touch with them, right? Because now you're coming in and they're in gloves and a mask, and you're asking them for stuff. They're making sure they keep those people's faces and putting little quotes like, so excited to be back to work, looking forward to serving you, and just doing those little bit of touches so that when you do come in, you're really excited to have that person serving you. And she might introduce herself and say, oh, I saw you on the social media, welcome back to work. I think those small things are those small touches that Ashley talked about, where you can set a tone without being as boisterous as probably like somebody like I would if I heard somebody being mean to a server, because I would turn around and be like, hey, take it easy during this time. But I think that's a very good way to set the tone on, we got to all work together here so we can get through this and get back to the way it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, empathy is huge right now because we are a business that runs on human interaction and human connection, and the pandemic has kind of threatened to take that away a little bit. It's sterilized the experience. So wherever you can add a human element to things back into it or to make it more personal is really great. And those businesses that come out with that empathy in mind and that human connection in mind, they put their employees first. Hey, we're keeping them safe in addition to you, are the ones that are going to succeed, because that's what people are looking for right now.
It's hard. It's hard. Customer experience was hit pretty hard from this. I mean, yes, I understand everybody looks at like, oh my God, our revenue went down and we're not making money. But, once we get through that, what's the next thing that it's hit? And it's the way that we react and the way that we're entertained by this industry. And we're not going to be entertained the same way we were before. You're not sitting in front of a bartender at a bar watching him, froth an egg white or, take an orange peel and garnish it, so intricately onto a cocktail, or, put some, aromatics on top of a cocktail. That theatrics is going to be gone for a while because we're just not allowed to have it, nor are we comfortable to have it. So I think people as customers have to have different expectations also when they step into a restaurant. And it's going to be, still a great experience because we're out. The main thing why we go out was to go out with one another, right? Social media, TV, sports has totally changed that. It used to just be you would go out with a group and it was a meeting spot for you to socialize. It wasn't about all the glam and glitz and the stuff we do now. So we've kind of had to go back to that, right? Sports were gone for a while. We're not allowed to have these theatrics in a bar. So I think people have to have the right expectations when they do go out to these restaurants and bars across the U.S.
Yeah, I agree, especially on that humanization part. It's actually something we've been doing because now we're doing the virtual sessions. So you're not seeing a lot of our people. So they've been all of the category teams have been putting together like TikTok videos relevant to, you've probably seen some on LinkedIn, but basically it's showing their faces. These are the people that are helping you behind the scenes. And, it's a great idea for restaurants and bars to do, especially with their, servers are going to be covered up. So it kind of puts a little face to it. Maybe do like one with the mask and one without. This way you can recognize.
Right. Well, think of it. You don't see the bartender now. 100% of the door. I didn't see the bartender who I normally go to this restaurant and see. I told the woman to say hi to him for me, but it's a different experience, right? We're not seeing the same people.
Definitely. So, last time you gave some kind of like a look to the future on what was happening, and that is happening now. Where do you see the industry 3 months, 4 months, 5 months from now?
Listen, Joe, we show this video all the time because we did that probably, when did we do that?
3 months ago or so? Yeah.
Like first week in April. Yeah. So I use that video all the time. I said, hey, listen, I've been saying this stuff and it's happening. So if I had to look forward, to fast forward another 3 months, my advice to restaurant owners, hospitality groups is we got to follow these guidelines as closely as possible so that we don't go backwards. We're going to continue to come out of this because we already we got over the biggest hump, which was no business for you for some people. And it was diminished, 10% delivery. You made it through the hardest part. And I know that we want to surge and come back stronger than ever. But we have to walk right now, and then we have to walk a little faster, and then we can get to a jog, and then we can go back to sprinting. We can't come out of this as a sprint because things are continuing to change. So by walking, we're able to pivot and make changes as we go through this so we don't go backwards. So we need to keep pushing hard. We need to keep innovating. We need to keep coming up with great things, like now everybody's using menus from their phones, and we're doing the things that make customers feel comfortable to come out. Mm-hmm. But we have to be thought leaders, and we have to show that we have to set the bar so that people don't go too far too fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think above all, bar owners should stay positive. It can be easy to get down and to get negative because everything's changing, and change can sometimes be viewed as a bad thing. But I think we should focus now on the opportunity. So we're getting the chance to make changes to businesses and to implement new technologies that were probably going to happen a few years down the line, whether it be contactless payment, QR code menus. Focus on the good that you're able to do in your business. Build those human connections, in a better way. Innovate your business, bring it to the next level. So I view it in a positive way versus a negative. And I think that'll help you kind of stay afloat and, keep moving through this challenging time. So,
and the one thing we don't have to teach Ashley now after all this, and we always said it, was have money as a business in case of disaster. Now, we never thought the disaster would be this big, and I've spoke about always having 3 months of revenue to be able to money to pay for your overhead. Now, I was being pretty aggressive because I thought people, if I said 3, they would keep a month and a half, right? Yeah. I never believed that it would really happen like that. But the one thing we don't have to say anymore is, like, be prepared for this again in a different fashion.
I think, and this could be a podcast in and of itself. There's going to be a lot of changes, I think, to the structure and the scaffolding, so to speak, of the restaurant industry. I think this has kind of woken us up in a lot of ways to the fact that there are really kind of holes in our system. I mean, healthcare for our workers is really lacking. The fact that we are running on these razor thin margins. I mean, why? These rents are so high, and even just to have a month and a half of cash flow in their back pocket is a lot for some bar owners. So I think we need to take a look at the system itself and what changes we can make and laws and the structure itself to kind of set us up for the future in a better way.
Well, maybe that'll be the topic of our next one, because we're going to need some content for our global wine, our on-premise adult beverage and global wine, beer, and spirits. So, well, we should regroup before that.
By that time, I'll have my sponsored mask by the liquor company when I come on.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you'll have a ton of them. I myself have an ECRM branded mask. I think I have it over here somewhere, that my father actually made for me. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to wear it, until, we start doing it in person. But
oh, I love it.
It does. Wait a minute. I feel like these should be in a gift bag you send to all the people you bring on the podcast as guests. I'm expecting one of those in the mail.
Well, no, he said this is a limited edition, one of one, because he made it by hand. Believe it or not, he was a sheet metal worker for his whole career, life. And then he retired and he started sewing things. And that's when I learned his mother was a seamstress. So now he's got these massive hands, and he's got a room with a mannequin, and he's all the sewing machine and all that. And he's using it, but it's a really, really well made. So I could see the effort he put into it, and I know why he doesn't want to make.
I'm gonna try to steal that one for you for sure. I'll
see if I could get a bar business one made.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so thank you guys, and I look forward to seeing you guys virtually soon. I think that's coming up, right? And then we'll do another recap, and I think Ashley, maybe we'll talk on some of those things that you just mentioned. So
some bigger measures.
All right, guys. Well, continue to stay safe and enjoy the openings wherever you are.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe.